Hello everyone! Today it is time for Chapter 7 of The Summer of the Secret Squadron. And I'll have to admit, today's chapter is a really good one. Chapter 7. We raced down Main Street to St. Paul's Episcopal Church, located only 2 blocks away. There were 3 churches placed right next to each other on Main Street. First Baptist and First Methodist were right across the street from each other, and St. Paul's was just below them on the left. It was a large, gray stone church, built in the Gothic style, with 2 massive red doors at the front. Unsure of where the church office was, we parked at the side door and tried it first. The door was locked. Then we split up to see if one of us can find an open door, but no luck. Apparently everyone had gone home for the day. We all came back together beside the bell tower, which was located at the back side of the church. We stared up at the tall structure with its pyramidal roof, wondering what we might find inside. Realizing it wasn't going to happen that day, we hopped on our bikes and made our way to the store to help Dad close up. Dad was excited to hear about the potential for another treasure hunt, but not so exuberant that he would let us get out of helping him clean up the store. We did, however, sweep and mop the floors in record time and were out of the store by 5:30. Dad suggested we let Mrs. Jackson in on the whole thing and see if she could get us into St. Paul's Church in the morning, since she was a member there. We decided to see if we could have a sleepover so that we could stay up and finish the job of deciphering the remaining messages. We went back to our homes to eat dinner and then hit up our parents with the idea. Mom was putting supper on the table, and Emily Ann and Caleb were doing their part to help, although it was sometimes hard to tell if they were helping or hindering. Dad came in and I took him upstairs to show him the window seat and the hidden compartment in the desk as we waited on Mom to finish dinner. "Benjamin, I'm so jealous of you," Dad said, chuckling. "As a kid, I was always playing detective, looking for mysteries to solve, but you've actually found one right here under your nose. You think maybe I could help you decipher the rest of those messages?" Dad sounded more like an 8-year-old than a 38-year-old. Mom was always saying that he needed to grow up. Dad was always in the middle of whatever us kids were doing. Catching lightning bugs in the backyard or crawdads and tadpoles at the bayou. Dad was right there with us. "Well, I was kind of wishing that Logan and Sumner could spend the night so we could work on them together," I said, hoping he wouldn't be too offended. "Well, okay. I guess it's your mystery to solve anyway," Dad said with a little bit of disappointment. Logan and Sumner came over after dinner. We were determined to complete the task that we had been working on for what seemed like a week. We worked up in my room mainly to keep Emily Ann and Caleb from driving us crazy all night, which they tried to do anyway. We were able to knock off message 9 in good time. It said, 17th of July, Jim. Found Joyce this morning. She was badly hurt. I don't know how much more she can take. I've tried to get her out of here, but she refuses. Her call to duty is strong. Ivan must be stopped. What can we do? Henry, SSFC. I can't help but wonder what these messages are about. It's hard for me to believe that they're just imaginary, and this one sounds serious. Sumner looked concerned. Who knows, maybe these kids spied on people downtown and made up stories about what they would see, I concluded, or maybe these messages came straight from the radio show. None of them are really making any sense. Logan interjected. We will probably be able to make more sense out of all of them after we have them all decoded and put in order. We got them all mixed up when we first took them out of the jar, and of course they don't make sense when we're reading one from August 1st and then the next one from June 15th. Logan had a special knack for stating the obvious, but Sumner and I had lost sight of this fact. We had 6 pages left to decode, so we decided to split them up, each of us choosing 2. First, we had to write out the scrambled alphabet twice on a piece of paper so that we could each have a copy and a way to decode our messages. We also thought it'd be best if we each completed both messages and waited for the others to finish before revealing what our message said. Sumner used the badge, while Logan and I used the paper decoders, which turned out to be the fastest way of deciphering them. Each of us worked furiously trying to beat the others in solving the code. While the first 5 messages left us confused and a little disappointed, the last 6 stirred us into a frenzy. My first message was very short, and as I began to make sense of the jumbled letters, I could hardly contain myself. I wanted to blurt out my new revelation, but since Logan and Sumner were still working on the first message, I managed to maintain my composure and began working on my second one. As Logan and Sumner began finishing up their first messages, they became equally excited. But since I didn't get to tell mine, I insisted that they complete their second one as well. If we weren't working at a breakneck speed before, we were now. Logan and I finished and had to wait on Sumner to complete the last message, which I must admit was a very long one. We drove him crazy until he finally put down his pencil. Finally, Logan and I said almost scoldingly. That one was longer than your 2 put together, Sumner glared down at Logan. It doesn't matter now. Let's just reveal our message, I said. Well, who gets to go first? Logan asked. I know, let's go by earliest date. That way we can at least write down the last 6 in some kind of order, Sumner suggested. Logan ended up going first with the one dated 21st of June. Jim. For emergencies, the 2 Texans and the 4 wheat rolls have been hidden at TP Cave at the southwest base of the rock. Henry, SSFC. 2 Texans and 4 wheat rolls? Well, I know what wheat rolls are, but what does it mean by Texans, I wondered. I don't know, but if the rolls are still there, they'd have to be some nasty rolls, Sumner joked. We can go down in a little bit and ask Dad if he knows what Texans are. Let's move to the next message, Sumner urged. That wasn't my good one anyway, Logan informed us. My first message was next in line, with the date of 27th day of July. Jim. All other confidential equipment and papers can be found in the library inside the toe kick of the bookshelf located in the northwest corner of the history section. Ivan will never find them there. The only things I have with me are hidden in the secret compartments. Henry, SSFC. And we found it, Logan exclaimed triumphantly, referring to the items that we had found in the desk. Well, that makes 3 places they've hidden stuff. The church, the cave, and now the library, Sumner stated. Confidential equipment and papers? Sounds like the same kind of stuff that's up in that belfry, I decided. You know, it may be just crafts these kids did in Vacation Bible School or something like that, Sumner concluded. That may be, but let's get on with the other messages. It doesn't sound like it's talking about crafts, Logan encouraged. Logan proudly read his second message as if he had written it himself. 2nd of August. Jim. I received the package for setting the trap for Ivan. I have placed the loot on the lander's roof, down in the ventilation exhaust, hanging inside by a cord. The ring he covets is also with the stash. I hope he is willing to take the bait. Henry, SSFC. What do you think about that? Logan boasted again. Loot? That has to be money. And a ring to boot. With the loot. Logan began singing. And a ring to boot with the loot. And a ring to boot with the... Okay, Logan, we get it, I said. We had to admit, it did sound like something better than papers, equipment, and wheat rolls. Sumner and I had pulled the decoded messages from Logan's hands and read it again. Well, that is the best one yet, Sumner confessed. Still, the chances of some kids leaving a bunch of money like that? There's no way. Do I have to keep reminding you about all the things we found in the desk? You wouldn't expect anyone to leave all that stuff either, but it was left there for us to find, and maybe these other things were left behind as well. Logan was convincing, and Sumner and I wanted to be convinced. So you think there's a big sack of money just hanging around on top of the Landers Theater? Sumner asked in a weird mixture of sarcasm and hope. Well, there's only one way to find out, Logan said optimistically. We'll get up there and look. How? Sumner asked. That theater's been closed for years. The building has even been condemned, and they're going to tear it down. The Landers was the other theater downtown, but not so lucky as the Melba. I was told it had closed down back in the 80s after the Cinema 7 came to town. It had been the nicer of the two theaters, with a big double marquee and a huge neon Landers sign that ran up to the top of the building. Inside, there were life-size oil paintings of old movie stars like Clark Gable and Vivian Leigh, Elizabeth Taylor, and John Wayne. Apparently, Old Man Landers, as people called him, just up and closed down the place on the same week as the multiplex grand opening. And as far as anyone knew, no one had ever been in the theater since. Anyway, the building had really begun to deteriorate in the last few years. Much of the exterior plaster had fallen off in big chunks, and several of the third-floor windows were broken out, allowing pigeons to set up housekeeping in the balcony. Maybe there's a fire escape in the back that we can climb up, Sumner suggested. It's worth a shot, I concluded. Surely we can find some way to get on that roof. Does anyone have a message that beats this one? Logan continued to gloat. Mine probably doesn't beat it, but it does reveal where they may have stashed more stuff, and I think we can get to this place without any trouble, Sumner emphasized. So read it already, I encouraged. 14th of August. Jim. The items you needed have been placed under the Bayou Train Bridge at the east end under the support ties. Look for the red X. Henry, SSFC. That makes 5 places where we might find some treasure, Logan said. I bet I can even tell you what we might find under that bridge, I stated confidently. How? Sumner said with a look of skepticism. Because my other message is dated 7th of August and is a request for certain things from Henry, I said with a smirk. Well, what does it say? Logan asked eagerly. Henry, I will be coming through on the Rock Island Rail on Tuesday. I will need an insignia, a codograph, and your old mission files. Sorry, I will not be able to stop long enough to meet with you. Jim, SSC. What's an insignia? Logan asked. I don't know, but a codograph is what this badge is called, according to the manual, Sumner said. If we've already found the codograph in the desk, that may mean there's nothing at the bridge, I said glumly. Exactly, Sumner agreed. We don't know that, Logan said. They would have to have more than one decoder to send messages back and forth to each other. That's true, I said, hopeful again. But that would mean the kid that lived here had more than one badge, Sumner continued to doubt. Well, maybe he did, Logan said, smartly, refusing to lose hope. Sumner, you've got the last message. What does it say? I said, trying to steer the brothers away from a fight. Nothing good, Sumner stated. In fact, this is a bad one to end on. 21st of August. Jim. Ivan caught us off guard. I thought he was going to kill Joyce. I tried to stop him. I took a hard hit on the head, but I think I'll be okay. I don't know about Joyce. I have never seen her this bad. Ivan has us at his mercy. Neither of us can get away. The loot is still on the roof. Maybe when mandatory training begins, we will be set free. Surely Ivan will not detain us by then. Hope to hear from you soon. Henry, SSFC. You're right. This one is bad, I said. And it doesn't sound made up. No, it doesn't. I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like we need to do something. Sumner was becoming frustrated. You're right, it does sound crazy, Logan said, happy to agree with his brother this time. You heard Mr. Parks. This stuff, these messages, they're from 50 or 60 years ago. There's nothing we can do about it now except find the loot. You heard what it said. The loot is still on the roof, and that's the last message. Yeah, it is the last message, Sumner retorted. Are you able to stop thinking about the loot long enough to wonder why this was the last message? Why we found some boy's prized possessions left in his room, as if he was here one day and gone the next. Doesn't that seem awfully strange to you? I guess I wasn't thinking about it that way, Logan said apologetically. But now we were all thinking about it that way. It was one thing to find these things in my room, in my desk, but all of a sudden it felt like we had invaded someone else's space, like we had disturbed a tomb or a shrine. If the boy had died, it would explain why the jar, the badge, everything had been left just as it was. Now that the thought had entered our minds, we couldn't think of any other explanation. Just doesn't make sense, Logan said. These were kids playing make-believe, just like we do. It doesn't make any sense to me either, but it's the only explanation I can think of that explains why all this stuff would have been left in this room, Sumner said. I wouldn't have left these things. My dad said that the real mystery was in finding out who left these things and why, I said. I'm beginning to think he is right. Well, what do we do now? Logan was ready to stop thinking about what might have happened to the boy who once lived in my room and move on to the possibility of better things. Truthfully, none of us wanted to think any more about what might have happened to him. So after a little more discussion, we moved on. It was time to make an agenda. We first decided to rewrite all of the messages in order by date so we might better understand them from first to last. We decided to keep a journal for our new club, and the last messages would be our first entries. Logan wrote, "Logbook of the Secret Squadron" on the outside of our spiral notebook in big black letters. Then we took them down to show Mom and Dad, who were very impressed with our accomplishment. We also told them our theory as to why the things had been left in my room. Dad admitted that the thought had crossed his mind that the boy might have died, but tried to reassure us that there was probably a more reasonable explanation, though he couldn't give us one. He also suggested that Mr. Parks might be able to shed some light on the decoded messages. We thought that it was a good idea and made plans to talk to him first thing in the morning. It was getting late, so after a quick snack, we went upstairs to make out our game plan for the next day. After some light debate over the order of business, we came up with an itinerary. The Great Adventures of the Secret Squadron. Day 2 of the Mystery of the Coded Messages. July 6. 6 o'clock, get up. 6:30, breakfast. 7 o'clock, talk to Mr. Parks. Next, survey the Landers Theater. If a way is found to the rooftop, then make our way up to look for the loot. Next, talk to Mrs. Jackson. See if she will let us into the church to look in the belfry. Look for classified documents and other articles. Next, check out the library. Search for confidential papers and equipment. We'll need compass. Next, back home to pack lunches and take to the bayou. Next, head to Lean-To Cave to search for the 2 Texans and the wheat rolls. We'll need compass and army shovel. Next, walk the tracks to the bayou bridge. Look for insignia, codograph, mission files. We'll need compass. It was a little after 10 o'clock, although it wasn't late. We weren't used to getting up at 6 in the morning, so we decided to set my alarm clock and hit the sack. But going to sleep wasn't easy. So much was running through our heads. Logan already knew how he was going to spend his share of the riches and was planning an early retirement all before the clock struck 11. Even Sumner and I had a wish list before it was all over. You could have thought it was Christmas. I wouldn't have admitted it, but at one point we were giggling like a bunch of schoolgirls. We finally quieted down sometime around midnight, but even then sleep eluded me as I thought of the boy who once lived in my room, who sat at my desk and who looked out my window. I wondered who he was. Was he still alive? And if he was, could we find him? I wanted to find him. I knew he would now be somewhere around 70 years old, but for some strange reason, I couldn't shake the picture in my head of a young boy frozen in time, alone, and needing to be found. And that's the end of chapter 7. Come back tomorrow for chapter 8. See you next time.